Hello everybody and welcome to Slow Stitch Style. My name's Katherine and this is my little corner of the internet where I talk about all things making. We're now into October. For October, that only means one thing for the knitter's calendar, and that's Socktober. So in today's video I am going to be talking about all of the socks that I've knit over the years, my favourite ones, my sort of favourite designs, my favourite ways to knit socks. And then I'll talk about some of the socks that I want to make in the near future as well. So I know that I knit my very first pair of socks in 2015, and the reason I know this is because at the time I created a little zine about it. So I was fresh out of university at this time and I had studied a crafts degree where I actually did do a lot of textiles. So I learnt to knit as a kid. Always loved textiles and sewing, did it all through school, and then chose to do, my degree was actually called Contemporary Applied Arts, but it was a bit of everything in your first year, so woodwork, metalwork, ceramics and textiles, and I always learnt textiles. And whilst I was there, I really got into machine knitting, but when I graduated I gave that up, and it's around 2015. It's probably where I really started to get into hand knitting more seriously. So before that, throughout my sort of teen years, I was only really making like scarves and small things, and I remember trying to knit from a vintage knitting book like a little bolero jacket thing, and didn't really know about gauge swatches, and that kind of all went wrong. So I'm not sure what inspired me to get into socks, but I did, and I picked up my first sort of socks things from Loop in London. So at the time, there we go, you can hopefully see on that little drawing, I picked up some double pointed needles, some Clover Bamboo ones at 2mm, very fine. I also picked up the book Socks from the Toe Up by Wendy D. Johnson and some Lang Wool superwash yarn. So the staff there had helped me. I will say, if you're getting into sock knitting, Loop is maybe not the place to start. It's not the cheapest option, but that's what I did. And so it was in 2025 that I made my first pair of socks. And I've made many pairs of socks since then, so there are a lot to go through. I will only be showing the ones that I currently have, that I've made for Graham or myself, and that are still wearable and usable. There have been some over the years that unfortunately haven't lasted. Where I can, as I said, I'll show the socks or I'll put an image in, and I will link to my Ravelry below. So if you like any of the socks that I show, if you go onto my projects page, you'll be able to find everything there. So I'm not going to do individual links to every pattern that I have made, but I will aim to for the stuff that I also want to make over the next few months, because I do have some nice sock yarns to keep using. And just whilst we're on the topic of socks, I should say, I won't classify myself as like a sock knitter. I think there are lots of people who knit who do love knitting socks primarily as their thing. I like them. I wear them around the house mainly. I don't tend to wear them out, although I do have a few pairs that I've worn. And yeah, we'll talk about those later, sort of more generally outside. But yeah. Socks are I like them, they're a nice portable knitting project, but they're not my main driver, and actually maybe this video will help inspire me to make better use of my hand knit socks. So we will now get into the socks. I'm going to try as much as I can to go chronologically, so yeah, hopefully you enjoy. I will admit that I'm going to have to use Ravelry to help me with my timeline of when I've knit things, and unfortunately I haven't always been very diligent about using it, but as we know, my first pair of socks were knit in 2015 and they are these. So actually I think I must have started that zine in the October of 2024, because when I look at the end of it, I finished these. I was saying I was going to finish these for the January because I kept delaying them, and yeah, I don't have them on Ravelry unfortunately. So these are just a really plain vanilla sock that knit toe up with a short row heel. I really don't wear these socks very much anymore. It's actually getting them out of the drawer and looking at them that I have realised they actually need darning because there's a break in them. And I think I just really keep these more for the sentimental reason, being the first pair that I've ever made. So that was my very first pair. I really struggled with my tension on these, particularly with the rib. I learned how to do like stretchy binds off doing these socks, so sock knitting has taught me a lot of things. And then quickly after that, I must have had more of that grey yarn left over, and then I brought some more. I'm sorry if you see any of the stains on these. As I said, some of these are like 10 years old, so they've really gone through the mill, and I feel like I've walked through tea on this pair. So they have all been washed, and they were just sitting in my sort of drawer with all my other things. So yeah, sorry. It's the same Lang yarns here. I think this might also be Lang yarns. I haven't got a record for these either. And I would have done the same toe up, and then I made increases all the way, and then the short row heel. This is the first time I sort of did contrast heel, cuffs and toe. I should have put some elastic in this top section, because when I wear them, they just end up falling round down my legs. They don't stay up by themselves. But they are quite cozy to wear in the winter with pyjamas. So that was the pair that came next. I then used some of that dark grey in another pair of socks that unfortunately were very well worn and loved by Graham and haven't survived. They got incredibly big holes in them. So these were using the short row toe and heel basic socks from that Wendy D. Johnson book, socks from the toe up, which I actually don't own anymore. And I continued using the Lang yarns. So I made up a fair art pattern on like an app where you can, like a pixel app I suppose, and then I implemented that throughout the sock. So I knew how many stitches I'd be knitting using the sock pattern. I'd done the toe, heel and rib again in a contrast and knit those up. I was clearly much braver when I was in my early 20s with my knitting, and I think I approached everything with a sort of blind optimism. I also only used to work part-time when I first left uni, so had a lot more energy to put into my knitting and would design more things myself. So I was just designing some colour work, but I am not really doing that sort of stuff as much anymore. So that was the next pair of socks that I knit. And then after that came the discovery of self-striping yarns. So we have the summer socks, as I call them. It's the, sorry, I am having to consult Ravelry because my memory is not brilliant. So apparently I used the Regia Design Team cable detail sock pattern, but I didn't use the cable, so I ignored that bit. And looking at them, I think they might have been a cuff down pattern. It's still a short row heel. But yeah, so this is the Regia Design line by Arnie and Carlos in the Summer Nights colourway, and I made these for Graham for the Christmas of 2015. And not long after, I made myself some. I don't know when. I think I made them after though. And I'm not even sure what colourway these are because I haven't documented these on Ravelry. So I would have used exactly the same pattern. They're pretty much exactly the same, just in different colourways. And actually with leftovers from that, I then made lots of little socks for an advent stockings. I'll just quickly put a picture of that in because I use that every year for Christmas. I actually hang it up here, so when it gets to Christmas time you will see that in the back of the videos. So yeah, we've gone from toe up socks to then trying cuff down, and this is where I will confess that I am a cuff down girly. I do much prefer that with my knitting. I then ventured out into some colour work, and I made the Love Socks by Devon Clement, and they are called the Love Socks because they have a lovely heel, heart on the heel. I think I must have pretty much followed the pattern exactly, kind of. I did a dark grey on the heel rather than the white, and this was made using the Berger de France Gumi 50 yarn. Looking at some of these, I either didn't sew my ends very well or stuff's been breaking over the years. So I knit these in February of 2016. I knit them in 9 days, which is quite quick for me. I'm quite a slow knitter. So they would have been a Valentine's socks present to myself. And yeah, I kind of love these still. I don't wear them as much as others. I probably should. And again, I don't know if these are toe up or cuff down. Let's have a little search. Oh, basic cuff down sock with some simple colorwork on the heel. So this as well is where I did a gusset heel for the first time, and that actually is my preferred fit for a sock. And I will say that this yarn that I used is probably a really light 3-ply, so it's probably the lightest socks that I have. So these are from 2016 and I still love them. I love stripes. I probably said that before. I love the 2x2 rib at the top, and the heel detail is just so cute and beautiful. Yeah, I really love these ones. So they do get somewhere, but not quite as much as some of the others. I think that's the thing sometimes, isn't it, with hand knit socks? Like, you don't then want to knit wear them very much. So yeah, they become like quite precious in a way. Then I should say I started going on to textured socks. So these are the Hula Nikki socks by Rachel Coopy, and they are knit using John Arbon's Textiles Exmoor sock yarn in the Blossom colourway, and I knit these in March of 2017. So I don't know if there were any socks between that, because that's like a big year-long period of no socks. There may be some of the others were before or after that, and I've got my timescales wrong. I love texture, and these just, honestly, I'm hoping the camera will focus on this, have these beautiful sort of texture details. And I think this pattern must have featured in Pom Pom magazine. So this was a time when I was getting Pom Pom. I don't even know if the magazine still exists. And I just really loved them. Again, cuff down, a gusset heel. Yeah. Is it the same on both sides? Yeah, same on both sides, so you don't have to worry about one sock going on whatever foot. The only thing I don't really love about this is not having a cuff. I don't know, for some reason, I kind of feel like that about all garments. I don't really even like jumpers that don't have a cuff. The cuff feels like it finishes the thing. So, yeah. Also, this sock yarn, these are probably one of my most worn pairs, I should say. And the yarn has like really stood up to all the wear. And I just really love the colour. So these are a favourite of mine. And then whilst we're on Rachel Coopy sock designs, these are the festoon socks, which again are from another edition of Pom Pom. And these ones are knit in, I haven't recorded it here, but I swear it's Socks Yeah yarn. So again, oh sorry, that size just rib, and then we have a beautiful texture on the other side. So yeah, these ones you do have to make sure you put them on the right feet. These are my most worn and just very recently washed and blocked actually, from a bit of wear. But yeah, these are great. Distinct foot, so you do have to make sure to put them on the right one. Again, there's not really a rib at the top, which I would prefer, but I love the colour, the yarn. As you'll see later on, I use Sockshare quite a bit. I really like her colour range in that as well. So these were knit in 2017 into 2018. So these took me quite a while. So I cast them on in the December, 15th of December, and I apparently didn't finish them until the April. So I don't know what I was doing that made it take so long. But hey ho. I will say I'm not a person that gets second sock syndrome. I think I get first sock syndrome. I can find it quite hard sometimes to motivate myself through the first sock that I knit, but then when I get onto the second one, because I've already made the first, I just am really keen to get it done so that I can wear the pair of socks. Next, we're going to talk about a pair of socks I knit for Graham. I have absolutely no details about these. So, as I said, I got back into hand knitting around 2015, and probably from then until, well, then onwards was when I was going to lots of yarn festivals and picking up sort of hand-dyed skeins. So this was a hand-dyed skein, self-striping, and I knit a cuff down pattern with a gusset heel, and then yeah, pretty simple, just plain sock. And I think the thing is with sock yarns that are like hand dyed, they are beautiful and they look lovely, but I personally really don't like how it's pulled, and this is my mistake for how I've knit the sock. And now I've been knitting longer, I realised that if I'd actually done an afterthought heel, I could have knit all of the sock and had the even distribution of the colour, and not then just had this really big grey part in the middle. Yeah, so Graham does wear these, but I won't say he wears them loads. They're not my favourite socks that I've knit, but they're fit for purpose, I suppose. And then I seem to have a massive gap in socks, or I haven't been recording them. So the festoon socks were the sort of last socks that I knit until socks this year, which definitely is not right. So I can share a couple of pairs. I have made socks for other people. I made socks for Graham's parents for Christmas one year. Yeah. So these would have been made at some time, who knows when, but they're a little shorter heeled sock. I will say, I think I used this. I think this is a Hannah pattern. Oh my gosh, ripping the thing, from Rachel Coopy, and this is an insert from the Knitter issue 131, whenever that came out. And that, you can tell I've used it a lot. That is the actual sock pattern, but I didn't do this pattern at the top. I just did a stripe, so I would have used it mainly for the stitch count and then for the striping. And I do find that once I realised that what the stitch count was that I liked and the size of needles that I like to knit on, you just then kind of use that and do what you want. And this pair of socks was made using up the remnants from this pair. So I think I was just trying to get rid of sock yarn, and again, I love a stripe. So we have another pair of stripy socks in a pink, white and a grey. As I said, this time with a gusset heel and shorter rib. I think I must have knit the rib after, because it looks like I picked up the stitches again and did the top. I'm not sure, but I definitely would have knit cuff down, because that is what I prefer. So maybe something went wrong and that's why I did it. And then these next pair of socks, again, I'm really sorry, I don't have any records of them, but another nice pair of textured socks. One thing I can tell you is that this is yarn, Rowan Fine Art yarn, and it's in the Hornbeam colourway. So originally I had bought this and made the Pinecone shawl by Carrie Vesterman. He was on University Challenge last year, which I found very exciting. I was like, oh, Graham, that's a knitwear designer. And I realised me saying I watched University Challenge probably makes me sound like a bit of a snob. If I answer anything, I feel incredibly smart. So yeah, anyway, back to the socks. So another pair of lovely textured socks. I knit that shawl and then I was like, I'm not a shawl girl, and I also am not a green girl. You just grow and develop, don't you, over your knitting journey? And I think some things that I still find hard with is enjoying a process. I'm really wanting to keep with that process, but they're not really liking the thing that comes out of it. Like, I love lace knitting, but I don't think I'd wear a lot of lacy stuff. I'm not sure what the pattern is for these, so they are textured in that they have a little cable design going down with a rib motif in the middle. Again, a gusset heel. You can tell that I just really love a gusset heel. It's my favourite type of sock construction style, and I think for me it's the most comfy style of sock to wear. And then we have a really big gap, as I said, until last year or this year, 2024. So last year, gosh, time flies. And that's where I made these socks. And these are the Oak socks by Vera Valimaki. They are a cuff down sock, again with a gusset heel, ribbed with this stripe detail at the top and the bottom, kind of like athleisure socks. These are made using Coop's Knit Sock in the Sphene and Aventurine colourway. As I said, all of my projects are on Ravelry, where I can have them. So yeah, this one definitely is on. You can go and have a look. I got this yarn in Norfolk last year, in the September, and then quickly knit these away. When I was knitting these, I'm just looking at my notes, the heel flap area of the gusset heel, I was knitting for ages, and I was like, this is going to be way too long. And it told you to do like 44 rows. I don't know where that's come from in the pattern, and I didn't stick to that. So I did 32 rows instead. Loads of people in the comments of their patterns, projects on Ravelry had noted about that as well. So I just followed that instruction. And yeah, and they came out good. The size is nice. And again, this sock share yarn, it just feels so nice. And I love that it's slightly variated, but not fully. Again, hopefully it will show that and it won't focus on my face. So yeah, I love those socks. Graham's not really worn them very much, but hopefully he'll start wearing them again soon. Then I quickly made myself a pair of Oak socks, and this time they pink. Surprise, surprise. Can you tell there's like colour themes here of the type of socks that I knit? And it's so funny because I don't wear tons of pink outside of like accessories. So these socks are made using, let me just double check that I'm going to say the right thing. Yeah, Earth Harvest fingering weight yarn in the Oleaster colourway. So that's the main body. And then I used up some of the John Arbon yarn in the Blossom colourway. So from these socks earlier, they were the leftover yarn. For this pair I made for myself, I did a contrast heel, but I did the same row count. Graham and I have quite similar size feet. This is a pair of socks that I wore with some quite new black boots, and unfortunately did get some staining. I don't know if you can actually see it. I don't know if it rubbed off quite badly at the time, and I remember, the toes are probably a better example. So the inside of these boots are like fleece lined, and they rubbed off on the toes, and I got just a little bit upset. You know, it takes so long to knit socks, and then they got ruined when I wore them actually like a pair of socks outside the house. So that's one of the reasons that I don't tend to wear a lot of my socks beyond the doors. Next up, we're going to get onto some serious colour work. So, and also a different style of sock. I appreciate, I've just shown you lots of top-down gusset socks, and it is my favourite. Then I made these Spring Frost socks. So this was a new to me technique, and it's also the first time of doing quite extensive colour work on a sock. They are beautiful to look at. I didn't really enjoy the knitting experience, and I will say that is because I knit socks on double pointed needles. So I use 4 double pointed needles and then 1 to go round, so 5. And when you're doing colour work, that's not great. I probably should have tried using small circulars, which I think I have a pair. I'd have to try and search them out because I don't use them. This was also top down, and it was the first time of doing an afterthought heel. So essentially you knit the sock all the way down, all the colour work, leave a hold row that you go back, and then you can knit the heel. And although it kind of looks like a short row heel, I found it much nicer to knit than short row heels. It's more like you're doing a toe, but on the heel section. And I know some people don't like doing cuff down because they don't like Kitchener stitching at the end. I really like it personally, and I hate having to do like is it like Turkish cast-ons or Judy's Magic cast-on for toe-up socks. I find it way too fiddly and it really hurts my hands. So yeah, so this is Spring Frost socks by the designer Saskia & Co. This was made using the Coops yarn that I had made in the oak socks for Graham, so the green and the yellow colour, but then also some of the earth yarns from the oak socks that I made. And I was making these as an attempt to stash bust, but it didn't use them all up still, so I still have some remnants, but they're beautiful, and I'm looking forward to Graham being wearing them. Some more, so I finished these in February to April, so these again took me quite a while to get done. And then the last pair of socks that I've knit that I'm going to talk to you about, these are not blocked, so I apologise. Again, I picked this yarn up when we were in Norwich in September of 2024, and I kind of regret doing that. I got carried away, you know, when you're in a yarn shop. It's really bad actually. It's a self-striping yarn, and this was in the owl colourway. So it's the West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply in their birds range, and I delayed knitting them for quite a while, so I knit them in June to July of this year. I delayed because I knew I wanted to do the afterthought heel, because I didn't want to have, like with my previous self-striping yarns where it goes over the heel, I wanted a different colour. So I used the technique of the afterthought heel that I'd learnt from the colorwork socks just before, but used it with the self-striping, and I wanted a colour that would match because nothing in my stash matched very well. And I know that's kind of sounds like an excuse. It is really, isn't it? I could have found something that would have gone, like the green from the other socks may have matched. Anyway, I chose the poppy of the West Yorkshire Spinners 4-ply because they recommend it as a good colour match for this. So I did get these done. These are for Graham. As I said, I haven't blocked them. He wasn't bothered about it, but they could do with it. And they aren't perfectly matching. They are like the inverse of one another. So whereas this one goes grey, dark brown, light brown, navy, green, grey, this one goes dark brown, grey, green, navy, light brown, dark brown. So it's, yeah, the opposite ways of one another. So that's all of the socks that I've knit so far. So my favourite type of socks, not toe down, cuff down, gusset heel, mwah, fantastic. That's a beautiful socks. I love the texture. I found that doing colour work in socks doesn't work for me as someone that uses double pointed needles, but I think I would like to try again using smaller circulars with some other things, which takes us on actually to the things that I would like to knit over the next few months. We still have Ravelry open because I have a whole board on Ravelry on my favourites tab that is just socks, because as I said, whilst I don't class myself as a primary like driven by sock knitting, it is such a nice thing to try things. It's small, it's portable. Sometimes I like having like a bigger garment project and then a pair of socks to make as well. And I know I have talked about some of the socks that I would like to make over the next coming months, especially in my stash busting video. But yeah, I'm just going to talk about a few of the things that I would like to make. Ones that I particularly have yarn for, and then ones that I just think are just lovely. So I will pop images up on the screen as I go through them. So originally I had talked about my stash. I'm really struggling with stash busting, saying that today. the Flower Garden socks, and my intention was to use this skein of sock share yarn. I really do love it, don't I? And then use these scrap pieces as well to make them. So the Flower Garden socks are by Renarde Endormi, and they're kind of like a little daisy sock, and I do really like them. But then when I was looking through my favourite boards, there's also a pair of socks that I have called Tiptoe Through the Tulips, and I think I might be more swayed by them. Especially there's a pair on there that have a pink background, and then the tulips are all different colours that I really like. And I think it would look really nice with this blue background, the green for the stems, and then alternating between this pink and the Earth Yarns colourway. And actually I do still have some more of the yellow, this yellow, I didn't bring that ball down, the yellow from these socks left over, and I then could do 3 tulip colours and use up more scrap. So that is quite tempting. So yeah, so it's either going to be Tiptoe Through the Tulips by Stone Knits, or it's going to be the or the Flower Garden socks. The Flower Garden socks have this nice picot edge. Tiptoes Through the Tulip have a nice rib. Tiptoe Through the Tulips look like it is, so the cuff down, simple decorative colour work, and the socks are knit with a short row heel. Not loving that. I might just hold and do an afterthought heel, because then that might also help with the scraps and making sure that I can knit the body of both socks in this colour and not worry about running out. The Flower Garden socks, as I mentioned, have a picot edge at the top, and they're knit cuff down as well. And then the knit in colour works. The socks are knit with a short row heel, and again finished with Kitchener stitch. So either way, I would have to be doing a short row heel, which I don't love. So I think I'm going to do afterthought heels on them anyway. And this is the pair of socks where I might try using a smaller circular needle for the colour work, because I think that would work better. If you, I will have put up both the socks. So if you have any opinions on which ones you think are nicer, then let me know. I will say, if I knit one of these now, it doesn't mean I'm not going to knit the other one in the future. I like both equally. And actually, if any of you wanted to look at my general favourite board for socks on Ravelry, there are a few that are floral. Although I might have unfavourited some, because I was realising that I was essentially saving the same thing in multiple sort of pattern ways. So yeah, a little bit embarrassing. Oh, I had actually brought down that yellow. There you go. So I could use that as well. Sticking with Coop Knit sock, yeah. If you watched my latest podcast video, you would have seen that I bought these skeins recently in order to make some socks as a Christmas gift. And originally I was thinking of doing textured socks with these for my dad's partner for Christmas. So last year I gifted her some socks, like boot socks that she'd asked for. My dad asked if I'd made them, and I hadn't. And so I thought, well, this year I will make some socks that I have made for her. So yeah, originally I was thinking textured, but I was like, that will take quite a while. And whilst I love textured socks, I can find it gives me quite a lot of pain in my hands, especially when I'm working on such small needles. So instead, I was then thinking, well, Christmassy socks. I came across the Snowflake socks by Magpie Jill on Ravelry that have this really nice colour work design on. The pattern's £5, which isn't bad. But this sizing is based on the UK size 4, and I do need bigger, which the pattern can go up to if it encourages you to use larger needles. I feel a little bit reluctant to buy it, and part of me knows that I actually have a colour work charts from other projects, and I could probably use the stitch counts from the Hannah socks that I have, these ones, so just use that as a template for stitches and then transfer colour work designs on where I want them, and figure it out myself, and maybe being a little bit braver with that, rather than always feeling like I need to buy a pattern. But we'll see. Also, doing colour work would mean potentially thinking about buying another yarn to do that, which again I wouldn't really like to do, but part of me thinks, well, if I did, I could then actually potentially buy another skein of this and then knit my dad and his partner this matching socks. So my dad's a size 11, UK 11 shoe. His partner's a UK 5'6". So I know for hers, a skein and a bit will be enough. I don't know what my dad's will need. So yeah, so I'm gonna know about that. I do have some beautiful textured socks on my Ravelry page. One of those is the Augustine's Cable number 2 socks. These are so nice. So these again are just under £5 to buy. They are a knitted top down in the round with the lace and cable pattern creating the structure. The heels are knitted in stockinette. It looks like a short row heel. Again, not my favourite, but maybe if I was knitting them for somebody else, I wouldn't mind as much. But these have so much texture on them and it would take so much time. And also, I'm not saying my dad's partner's not knit-worthy or my dad's not knit-worthy, but it would have been the first thing that I've made for them, and I don't want to invest tons and tons and tons. Like, knitting socks takes a lot of time and energy already. Then adding in super heavy texture, it means a lot more, and I have a lot of things I want to knit over the next couple of months, so I kind of want to also be realistic about what I can achieve, and not put my hands out of action for the next couple of months by knitting too much. And as I said, the thing that puts me off doing the colour work is I would have to buy more yarn, and if I wanted to do matching for my dad and his partner, I would have to buy more yarn, whereas I do have a lot of the West Yorkshire Spinners Owl colourway left over, and I think my dad would wear some socks like this. Like the colours, in terms of the colours, it's not like I've been knitting him socks that are way out of his colour interest. I don't know if there would be enough to knit socks for him to his size, but maybe I can knit socks 2 at a time. I've never actually done that, and maybe that will be a good time to try that technique, to see if I then have enough yarn. I would be using the poppy for the contrast heel, toe and cuff again, so they would look like that but bigger. So these are probably to like a 7 to 9 UK shoe size, and actually if I weighed it, I'd be able to figure out how much yarn's left over and whether I would have enough to knit my dad's socks using this. So that is an option, because I don't want to knit Graham another pair of socks in this, and I'm just like, I've just then got loads of yarn that I'm not doing anything with. So yeah, it's quite hard, isn't it, sometimes? I will have a lot of this yarn left over though, so I really then do want to knit some textured socks for me, and maybe some lace socks. So earlier I mentioned I really do quite like lace knitting, and I think socks are a time where you can go lacy, and it's quite nice. So I've added to my queue on Ravelry the Giverny socks by Little Loops. Little Loops also has some really beautiful colourwork floral socks that I nearly contemplated doing instead of the first 2 pairs of colourwork socks that I mentioned. So these are a Picot Edge sock. So they are inspired by country gardens. They have an overall lace pattern and Picot edge on the cuff for a delicate feminine effect. The instructions for a 1x cuff are included as well, if you wanted to do that instead. So they are knit cuff down and use a heel flap and gusset construction, my favourite. So I'll pop a picture on the side, but as you can see, it just has this really nice lace detail. I quite like the textured heel flap as well. And I think in this grey colour, it'd be a really nice basic in my wardrobe, and I probably could wear them more out of the house and they'd be a little bit robust. It's £4.50 to buy in the UK. And yeah, they come in 2 sizes. So it's either to fit a 17 centimetre circumference foot or a 19 centimetre. And apparently they're designed to have approximately 1.5 to 2 inches of negative ease. So yeah, and the West Yorkshire Spinners yarn is one of the recommended yarn. On their pattern page, they use this really nice, like cream coloured pair that are lovely. So yeah, I'd quite like to knit those. Or if not those, I was also eyeing up the January socks by Caitlin Barthold. So these are sort of a plain looking sock, but then have a frilly bit on the cuff. I think I would learn some new techniques with these, but because they're called the January socks, I also would like to knit them in January. I'm one of those people. I made the September coat by Merchant & Mills in September. I think I made the April cardigan by Petite Knit in April. And with the January socks, I actually would like to knit them in like a cream, as is shown in the pattern. I probably would change the construction. So it is a top down again, love it. It does a provisional cast on that you then go back up to pick up the cuff. The heel looks like a short row heel. So I would probably try and change that. So yeah. So that's all the socks. Hopefully this hasn't been too boring, because I appreciate me just sitting and showing you socks. May not be the most interesting thing, but throughout October I think I will be focusing more on socks. So I definitely want to get the garden socks or the tulip socks cast on for me. So I need to make a decision pretty soon actually, and actually by the time I publish this video I might have already decided. And hopefully I will also make a decision about the socks for my dad and his partner. And yeah, some of the other things will then have to wait based on what comes out of that. So if I did knit my dad the ones using the West Yorkshire Spinners, I just have to make sure that I had enough of this left to make me socks, which I should, because I can always do a shortened leg on them. So yeah. So thank you for listening along today and hearing about all things socks. Do let me know if there are any sock patterns that you really rate and recommend. What's your favourite way to knit them? As I said, I'm normally a double potted needles gal, 2.5s for the Bane sock, 2.25s for my ribs normally, if anyone wants to get very specific. Top down, gusset heel, that's the most comfortable I think. That's my favourite thing to knit. I'm not a toe up girly, so if you do recommend patterns, please don't recommend toe up ones for me. Although maybe I should give it another go. I might enjoy it more now I'm a bit more of an experienced knitter. So yeah, as I also mentioned, all of the sock patterns that I have linked on Ravelry you can find on my projects page. And if you want to see any of the other things that I'm thinking of knitting sock wise, if you go into my favourites board, there is one that's dedicated to all things socks. So happy Socktober to you all. I hope you all have fun knitting socks yourselves as well, if that's what you are interested in. So thank you for watching this video, as I've probably already said, but yeah, I'm starting to ramble now, which is a sign that it's definitely time to stop talking. So yeah. Thank you again. Thank you for all the lovely comments on the videos that I've done so far, for the likes and for people subscribing. It does really make a difference to me. It brightens up my day. So thank you very, very much.